Gathering 2023, or as known as Gathering 14, with Patrrick Ober. How you doing, brother?
Very good, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
I was walking by and I happened to encounter a friend and colleague from some time ago, and of course I was actually drawn to this before I was drawn to him. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Tell you what, we just very briefly touched base on what you do, your tools and jewelry here. So if you don't mind, I'm going to grab this espresso very quickly and come back around. Sorry I didn't bring one for you, but are you a bourbon drinker by any chance?
I am, thankfully.
Okay, well tomorrow I will endeavor to persevere to drop by with a little local distilled spirit. So
I appreciate that.
With that in mind, what got you started, Patrrick? What made you interested in some of these products? And while you're saying that, I'm going to pan along here.
I started in 1992 making chainmail armor. So things that are based on this type of work.
Right. And that's for reenactors?
For reenactors, and I discovered that it's very difficult to sell chainmail shirts. It also, the time involved in those is pretty berserk. So I switched to smaller things, mainly jewelry.
Now I'm going to jump in. You said berserk, so you'd be selling to berserkers.
Indeed, and that's also a problem. So working with smaller objects, and then I took a jewelry class where I learned how to solder sterling. So being able to do work like this and like this, and from there learned how to do work that's even slower and more time consuming, because that's generally what fascinates me. This style of work has not changed significantly in almost 3,000 years.
And in essence, making rope, for lack of a better
It's like rope,
term.
but it's not rope because it's individual components that articulate differently. But it is like rope. And it's a fascinating thing because you get to work with materials in ways that most people decide not to. Most people take a class on how to do that and then stop. They're like, never again, I don't want to do that, because it's slow and it requires a lot of practice, but it requires really minimal tools. This style of chain can be done with 2 pairs of pliers and all and a torch. And that's all you need. Literally, that's it. It's not overly complex. Over time, I decided it would be fun to buy a lathe. So I started off making a lot of titanium beads, like this kind of stuff, and then I bought a bigger lathe, and have slowly been figuring out what I can do with it and adding more capability based on buying new tooling and getting more confident in not killing myself, because that's also important.
Yeah.
And then I figured out that it was super fun to make maces, because my background is also medieval art history and Renaissance art history. And I don't get to see lots of fun maces out there in the world, so I decided it was a good time to make them.
Yeah.
So these are all hand machined out of a variety of titanium. So usually I use grade 5, and the handles can be almost any combination of micarta, G10, titanium, other metals, depending on what somebody wants. And they're all hand machined, so there's no CNC involved in anything that I make myself. The only stuff that I don't make still are jewelry clasps, because this is terrible. I don't want to do that. But every other component of the chain I make.
Made from scratch.
Made from scratch, to the point where periodically, if I have enough scrap floating around, this particular chain is made out of hand-drawn wire. So I started off with an ingot, whacked it out, and turned it into wire.
So when I'm saying scratch, you mean scratch.
Yep.
An ingot that you've melted down and drawn out into the wire itself.
Yep.
Yeah, amazing.
It doesn't happen very often, but periodically, if I have a project where I have to finish out something and I need only a little bit, I can draw down wire from something else. This particular one was literally from an ingot that was, about that big, and I wound up with about 10 feet of wire from that ingot just to use for this style of chain.
Yeah.
So I still have a couple feet of that left at home.
Interesting.
And then I discovered it's also nice to make spikes. There's something that appeals to me about being able to turn out titanium spikes and then be able to make handles that most people don't generally do with them.
And in essence, the tool that would defeat the chainmail armor.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thing.
You're on the assembly side, and you're manufacturing a tool for the disassembly.
I've got both sides. You know, if you got to put a hole in it or you got to squish up what's inside, that's what I got.
Very nice, and nice and lightweight. That material again is.
This particular one is made with titanium. The handle is black paper micarta, G10, and leather. And everything's one at a time. Everything is unique in that I may follow the same kind of patterns for things, but they're all a little different.
Now, the question I've got, when it comes to a spike and as a defensive tool, typically with titanium blades, it's and I'm no metallurgist, but it's considered a softer metal, so when it is a version of titanium that can be sharpened to the point of making a good blade, i.e. like the Mission Knives or some of those other companies, are you using a particular type of titanium to ensure that your spike will not, for lack of a better word, bend or dull? Or is that a moot point when it comes to a spike?
It's kind of a moot point when it comes to a spike. The forces on a spike are a little different because they're designed not for prying and not for cutting. They're straight up stabbing. You aren't trying to do much else with it besides poke a hole in something as fast as possible.
Be an excellent ice spike for my to prep my martinis. Yeah.
And you can do a lot of different things with them besides just using them. Like marlin spikes are originally designed for not tying and untying.
Right.
You can do whatever you want to with it. I'm also able to do spikes like this, where this is actually 9 inches long. So I've turned the front end with one taper, the back end with another taper, and then I bend it manually. So there's still no CNC, no hydraulics, nothing.
Right.
This style is also good for a variety of grips, but it's also probably the only ergonomic spike that I make because you can hold on to it like this and use it to poke stuff.
A lot of different ways it looks like. I'm going to be handling one of those in just a minute. So I'll tell you what, if you would, Patrick, give us some price points on, and you can be general in terms, because I know that it will probably it will vary based upon materials being used for a particular piece, correct? Okay.
Yep. In general, fancier spikes that are larger, these are all going to be in the $175 range. Some of them can go up, some of them can be less. It depends. If it's small, it's probably going to cost less.
Right.
If it's big, it's going to cost more. And if it's solid, it's a function of my time to machine something like this.
Right.
Jewelry can range anywhere from $35 for a pair of earrings up to $2,000 depending on what it is. All the maces can range from about $250 up to $700. All depends on size, configuration, how much work I have to put into it.
Manual labor, etc. Yeah. Okay, very good. What is your website?
My website is Ober, O-B-E-R, Metalworks, all spelled the way it's supposed to be, .com.
Very good. And it is a silly question, but is this your sole lineup for right now, or do you have some products still maybe back at the shop that if somebody made an order or they found something they would be able to make?
This is pretty much it, but I'm also always happy to do custom work. I generally have materials for all sorts of things at home. Custom work can be little stuff to big stuff. It all depends on what someone wants.
Very good. Now, on a personal level, favorite adult beverage if you have one? And frankly, that could be iced tea.
I mean, usually it's whiskey.
Whiskeys? Okay. Do you enjoy any tobacco products?
I do not. No, I have enough inhaled particulate from this stuff.
Without probably with the resultant the level of intoxication at some point, right?
I mean, it feels a little weird when your respirator gets a little clogged up and you start feeling like, I have to stop now.
It's like, did I accidentally imbibe with hallucinogenic?
Yeah, is it clogged or am I just having a rough day?
Yeah. Okay, very good. Well, where do you hail out of?
I come from just outside of Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay, very good. We were talking about weather a little bit with the interesting inclement weather here and the interesting mud sit rep that you're having back home.
Yeah, mud now, it might dry out or it might get worse. Who knows?
Yeah, very good. Well, you travel well safe and home, and enjoy the rest of your show,
Thank you
Patrick.
so much. I appreciate it.
Take care, brother.
Same to you.